I find it unspeakable that Israel's first targets of this ground operation were the hospitals. I mean, we showed a map earlier where you can clearly see the incursion zones and then the attacks on hospitals. So the Israeli army has attacked sniper positions across from hospitals, shooting into hospitals before they lifted up one trap and walked into a tunnel. So I think that gives you an idea of what this war is about. You can see those hospitals in the north. They're basically eliminated. They're wiping out the hospitals. They're moving all of the people that are taking shelter at the hospital. They're killing people inside the hospital from outside the hospital. And like those testimonies from Hind and Suar said, that people were being sniped as they're leaving the hospital. They created utter panic because people believed that, you know, even with their experience in all of these wars, people believed that Shifa, the largest hospital in Gaza, would kind of be the last place that you could be in Gaza. And Israel flipped that script and made it the opposite. They made it the first place targeted for eradication. Before they're able to even move into Gaza City, they move in from the periphery and raid, which is the words that they use, that they raid inside Gaza City. So they're not actually moving and staying inside Gaza City. They're raiding Gaza City to attack hospitals as the principal objective of their ground operation. A ground operation that they say, the Israelis say, they've used 5,000 airstrikes just in the 2 weeks of the ground operation. 3,300 from airplanes, 900 from attack helicopters, and they're using drones. People talked about drones shooting at people leaving the hospitals. So there's no access to and from the hospitals at all. And they're laying siege to the primary care facilities that people have, you know, that are living in the most desperate situations. That's what their army has decided is the principal military objective in the Gaza Strip at this point. And I think, you know, we talked on this program for a while about the cowardice of Israel. And I want to say that on Friday, watching this happen on Friday and Saturday was unbelievable. I couldn't believe what we were watching. The utter cowardice of attacking hospitals in the way that they did, leaving people to die when they don't have the courage to stand and fight in any of these areas face to face with soldiers, but are willing to attack intensive care and cardiology units and to cut, you know, neonatal premature babies off from their access. Like the brutality of that, even after all these decades covering this conflict, was shocking to me. It was shocking to my colleagues, talking to them on Friday about what was happening, the panic that ensued from a mechanized infantry attack on an unguarded hospital. For all this Hamas command and control garbage, the hospital was virtually unguarded because it's a civilian facility with no military purpose. And that was their first target. But we see that they haven't been able to fight their way into Beit Hanun in the north. They're moving down the coastline from the north, and they can't enter the beach refugee camp, which is the buttress on the outside of attacking Gaza City. They tried, we can read from their reports, they tried for 2 weeks to attack from the north to get at Shifa, and they weren't able to get through the Shadi camp. The Israelis on Friday, on the day that they were attacking these hospitals, released a video showing their troops operating in the Shati refugee camp, which on that map is between Al Nasser Hospital and Al Shifa Hospital. They're on the outskirts of that, which means basically they've only driven down the beach on the Mediterranean Sea. And they showed photos being on the outskirts of Shadi with their troops facing the sea because they're terrified of being attacked by Qassam frogmen who will attack them from the sea. And they're moving from there into the city to attack the hospitals. The way that they moved to get at the hospitals, if you look at the south of that map, in the bottom area where you can see the striped lines, that's essentially the cordon zone that the Americans and the UN negotiated with Israel to allow people to leave through those corridors. Israel has used that corridor to move its armor down to the beachfront and attack from the south and move up and attack from south to north, which is the opposite push of their entire 2-week ground campaign. And in order to do that, they had to attack Al-Quds hospital in Tel Hawa, which people reported from inside the hospital were shooting children inside of the hospital. They had a sniper's nest across from the hospital, but they're not leaving their armor. They're not leaving their tanks, but they're attacking from the air with artillery and from drones, attacking in the most cowardly way the most vulnerable target in the entire Gaza Strip. And when we've heard these health reports, you're talking about the most dire situation on planet Earth. There's no other hospitals that are functioning, doing surgeries without any tools at all. The footage from Al-Quds hospital on Friday showed people, surgeons doing surgery using cell phone lights. The brutality of that type of warfare, when you don't have the courage to actually get out of your tanks and fight with the thousands of soldiers that the Palestinians have defending their territory, it just really, I want to just say, it was shocking, even to me. The red lines that Israel has crossed in this month-long situation is just, it's brutal and it's unspeakable. And I can adjust and do the military analysis, but I want to just say that it's deeply disturbing what we're watching. And the fact that this is just allowed to happen and that the Americans talk about their humanitarian wing of this operation while we're watching this happen at Shifa. People in Shifa are crowded inside the basement, inside the single building that's remaining. Israel has bombed the entire campus of Shifa and taken out all of the buildings surrounding it. We used to see pictures from Shifa with hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of people sleeping on the campus in the parking lot. They're not doing that anymore because Israel dropped bombs, the same bombs that Dr. Ghassan talked about, the ninja bomb, they call it, the Ginsu knife bomb that drops, thousands of knives on people, maiming them and leaving them in the parking lot, and then attacking the rescue workers in the parking lot of the hospital so that people can't actually leave Shifa Hospital. The paramedics, the surgeons, the doctors can't go out into the parking lot and get the people, the journalists, in one of the cases, which is part of the reason why the journalists left, because if you're just going to be massacred and they're going to shut off the lights and invade the hospital and arrest the doctors, what's the move for Israel here? What happens when you occupy Shifa? Are they going to go and pretend they found tunnels inside Shifa Hospital? It's unbelievable. And I'm old enough to remember when they said Shifa was a command center before there was even tunnels. And it was the most ludicrous claim in 2003 because the entire Gaza Strip is in pitch black darkness. And the only place with a light on in the entire strip, and this has been the case for 20 years of wars, is Shifa Hospital. It's the only place there's television cameras. It's the last place a militant would go, let alone a famous leader of an underground movement, to go into the only lit place, in the only place where there's journalists, the only place where there's cameras in the entire Gaza Strip. So, I mean, it's enraging. I'm extremely angry. I know that everybody watching this is extremely angry at what they're seeing. It's the brutality of this ground war that we talked about. This is what it looks like. If you're not willing to fight and you're only going to attack soft targets, where doctors, talk about how they've given 15 years of their lives of training to go and work in these situations. And that's the target that Israel chooses with its vaunted army, with the 400,000 reserves that it called up, the first time ever that they've had an entire division in combat, reserve division in combat at once. They're bragging about all of these new innovations. They've got new weapons. They've got new armored vehicles that they're testing out. It's a laboratory, but it's a laboratory for attacking civilians. They have this drone that people were talking about outside of Shifa that's shooting at people. Those drones aren't built for shooting fighters. A fighter would turn and shoot it out of the air. These are civilian massacre tools.
I've actually seen footage of that, which was not published because it could have endangered people, because it was clear whether it could have been clear to the Israelis. They might have been able to figure out where it was filmed. So there was it wasn't published, but I've seen footage in the vicinity of a hospital in Gaza City, a complex of hospitals. This is not Al-Shifa, but another of the major hospitals, of a quadcopter. This is one of those helicopter drones, just firing its guns down towards people in the street randomly. And in fact, the footage showed that drone being shot down by fighters. They were able to shoot it down. So that shows what you're saying, John, that this is not an effective weapon against the resistance, because they can pretty easily shoot it down. It's a weapon of terror against the civilian population, to try to force people to leave Gaza City. That's what they were using this for, as well as incendiary flares, as well as tear gas, dropping tear gas from drones. Again, all in order to terrorize the civilians into leaving. But what I want to ask you about, John, if we go back to the map that we have,
let me just jump in really quickly before we move on. The drone, Ali, they used that drone on people who were walking in the first days. We've talked about for the last 5 days on Electronic Intifada updates about the number of people that have fled Gaza City. But earlier in the week, people weren't leaving because they were terrified, because they were attacked by these quadcopters while they were walking to the south. And they left body parts and people all over the road that Hind was talking about, fired from those quadcopters. And only reason we saw it was because somebody rode their bike, somebody from Gaza rode their bike through the carnage and showed us this. And it wasn't a bomb scene. There wasn't a crater. It was this quadcopter shooting people out like sitting ducks and murdered them. And so for the beginning of last week, people wouldn't leave Gaza City because they were like, there's no way we're leaving. You're massacring people, which is why you started to hear this like corridor happening, and why the United States started, saying, no, there's going to be 4 hours each day. They had to really explain to people that this was happening this way. The Israelis had to bring their tanks and stand on top of their tanks to show people that those tanks weren't going to shoot people, because they were shooting people. And that's why people didn't leave Gaza City, because these quadcopters were massacring them. And as you said, any fighter just looks in the air and takes down the copter. It has no military purpose whatsoever.
And of course, and as I pointed out at the beginning in my opening remarks, the interview from Dr. Monir Alor, who's at Al-Shifa, and he's the Director General of the health ministry in Gaza, was saying this morning on Al Jazeera, or this afternoon in Gaza on Al Jazeera, that the Israelis, his words, are playing games with people. they're sending people at the hospital text messages saying you have to leave, you have to leave, you have to evacuate. There are safe corridors. This is what he said this afternoon. And then when they would try to step out of the gate, they would be shot.
Right away.
Right
and
away.
Dropped right on the ground in front of the hospital for everyone to see.
Yeah. So it is a sort of a sadism that is very difficult to comprehend, even from the perspective of their logic. But I want to, and also I think it's worth emphasizing again here the fact that we've had last week Antonio Guterres, the UN Secretary General, and then yesterday Josep Borrell, the EU foreign policy spokesperson, repeating the Israeli line that Palestinians are using civilians and hospitals as human shields. Like, how do you use it? I mean, where are civilians going to be except in a hospital? I mean, that's what it's for. It's for, but it's important to point out that the repetition of this lie is incitement, not just cover, not just an excuse. It is incitement to Israel to commit crimes against humanity by attacking hospitals. And all those officials, whether they're American, European, or UN officials who repeat this Israeli propaganda about human shields, should be charged under the Genocide Convention, because this is a genocide. An incitement to genocide is a crime under that convention, and we should seek to hold them accountable.
The hospitals are not on the way to their objective. It's not like the hospital is in the way of where they're going, and so they have to make some kind of military concession to what's happening in the hospital. They're literally structurally attacking the hospitals from their positions, moving into the hospitals, and then moving back to their positions. The objective is the hospital. It's not in the way of their other objective. They have gone at the most vulnerable people in Gaza as their primary objective.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit like, leave a comment. These engagements help us with the YouTube algorithm, and it helps us to get around Silicon Valley censorship as much as possible. It does make a difference. You can also support our journalism by going to electronicintifada.net and clicking on donate now. Thank you.